when you're on the ranch, you're always getting hurt. So when do you call the vet? Calling the vet's not always for the animals. Sometimes it's for us too. So when do you actually call the vet for the animals or for us? Because obviously everybody gets hurt, but I mean, it's still important.
Oh, no, I've never called a vet for me. I can think
Hey,
of.
I've heard of people that they've been like, "Hey doc, what do you
Well,
think?"
yeah, I mean, but that enough stuff about stuff that you can kind of take care of that ahead of
Sure.
time without having to call a vet and raise any red flags. I've
Some people have asked me that before. They've been like, "Hey, how do you know so much about, medical care and stuff like that?" I was like,
got horses.
don't ask." Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen enough of it on animals and then also a few times on humans. I just got to figure it out. Like it's a good, mostly stop the bleeding. From there, like you can figure it out.
and it's about yeah, it's just that it's wound care
Yeah,
from start to finish, and it's similar, different applications here and there. You can do
sure.
different things, but I wouldn't try a cesarean on a woman.
No, nope, nope.
I mean,
Mm-mm.
and I wouldn't try a cesarean on a cow. I'd kill her. So those are things that you need a vet for, because I don't have the drugs to put them down
Yeah.
and keep them down so that it's an anesthetic. I mean, it's a learned technique, and they're pretty dang good at it. And
Well,
I wouldn't. I had one vet tell me, she goes, "Oh, I know you can do one." Well, yeah, I can do one, but how successful is it going to be?
right.
And I still don't have the scheduled drugs to, put the animal out a little bit or anesthetize them enough that you can do it.
Well, even if you watch Dr. Jim with like the horse castration,
Yeah.
that one, there's you and I could do it, and I know
Oh
you've
yeah.
done it in the past without any of the sedatives and stuff, but like still like just the ease of care, the quickness with recovery,
Yep.
and then also just the rapid ability to perform what's needed and then get
Right.
it done and over with rather than prolonging it. I feel like it's just there's some times where it's like, you know what, it's just best to have the vet do it because overall it's just going to be a better experience.
Well, yeah, and especially for the horse.
Right.
I know what you mean, but we used to castrate our 2-year-old studs, make them geldings, and we did it by pulling them down, holding their feet, and then we'd castrate them with no sedative or no nothing. And that was the old way of doing that. And it's hard on them, and then you're letting them up, they heal up, and then later in the spring you're going to do what? You're going to start working with them and climb on their back.
Yeah.
I
Don't
wonder if
trust.
there's little resentment issues and
Yeah.
trust issues there.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't think about that at the time. We just did it. But no, anything that they can't remember and a little soreness, you know what? I've not had any surgeries done where they said, "Yeah, just go ahead and cut me open, doc. I'd kind of like to watch." No, I haven't done that, and I'm not going to do that. There's something to be said for a little bit more humane treatment that way, and you do the best you can. But there years ago they didn't have any sedatives, they didn't have anything like that, and they did it. Nobody thought twice about it. But if it's available and it's affordable, and it usually is, it's not bad. It costs a couple $100 to um, geld a stud. It's that's I think that's money well spent.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about like bigger like trauma? So horses are always getting hurt, right?
They seem to
And then,
be.
but then the other thing too is you look at we have actually not had a big lump jaw issue with the cows
No,
recently, so we've never filmed that and put it on YouTube.
right.
But sometimes there's a jaw, an abscess of some sort, and we end up cutting some sort of incision to drain it. Um, those are all things that for the most part we've really just taken care of, and if it's
Yeah.
to the extent where it's super bad, we'll just euthanize the animal. But where is there a point where you're like, hey, this is too much for me, but it's not enough that we need to euthanize the animal, but we need to call the vet? Where would you say that line is?
If I don't know what to do, or if I have a real question about whether what I think is going to work really would work,
Yeah,
and the health of the animals at stake, then I'm going to call a vet.
sure.
And there's sometimes you have some self doubt. You go, "Yeah, is this bad enough?" And then often more often than not, a vet will come and it's pretty close to what you've said. And of course, the vet's going, I'm glad you called, you know. And there's some things where it's a minimum, which they're okay with because they're making money on an easy job. And then there's others
Sure.
like, oof, wow, this is going to be involved.
Yeah.
And either of those, a cesarean's a big is a something we have not had in a long time. I don't think you've ever experienced having to have a cesarean
No.
on a cow, and thank God. I knocking
Yeah.
on wood,
I've seen some videos of that on YouTube. That looks horrible.
Yeah, so you just hope that doesn't happen. And if you get into a spot where you're calving, and that would probably be my biggest thing, is if I'm in a spot where I'm calving and I can't make things work, it's not happening, calf is breech backwards, and that's got to come out, with a vet's help. Then I got to call that vet and hope they can get there in time to save this cow and calf.
Yeah.
And most of the time when it's like that, when it's that bad, you're thinking the calf's gone. I just got to save this
Sure.
cow now.
Right. Uh, there, I would like to share one experience that we've had before that was unique, and that was we had I don't even remember how old he was. I want to say like two, maybe he was younger, so maybe somewhere between a weanling and 2 years old. But he had essentially blood pustules on the inside of his leg, and we came to find out they're just called sarcoids.
Right.
And the doc ended up having to do two surgeries because the first one, if I remember correctly, didn't work good enough, and she said she had to cut deeper to try and get rid of like essentially the root of the issue.
Right.
And then essentially what happened was we had to apply a poultice, a medicinal poultice every single day for
Yep.
several months before he was good to go.
Yeah, and they're also known as bloodworts,
Blood
but
works. Yeah.
a sarcoid, yeah, and it's a small isolated cancerous cell, basically, is what it is. Spontaneously, we've only had the one happen to that I can ever recall.
Yeah, I was in high school. I remember it
Yeah,
distinctly because it was during wrestling season, and after practice, we'd have to take him to the little shed and do it out there.
yeah, yeah.
It was cold.
It was cold. Yeah, and then what do you do? He was a sale horse, and then so now what do you do? Here's the dilemma. Oh, we may never sell this horse because
Right.
if he's got
Sound.
cancer, what do you do? So we proved him to be sound after I think we kept him at least 2 to 3 more years and used him. And by the time you're done, he was a really nice little pony. And of course, that's the kind of the good thing to come out of a bad situation. You got a horse that you have to doctor and doctor a lot. They usually get pretty nice and used to it because all the
Yeah.
handling and it's in a benefit in to a bad situation. But we ended up selling him and letting him know, hey, this is what's happening with him. He's had this bloodworts or sarcoids and they've been removed. We've doctored it. You can see the scars. That's what these are. And to my knowledge, they said, yeah, we're good with that, and never ever came back.
Interesting. Yeah,
So
it's just
yeah,
I felt that was an odd one because it did require a vet to be there to take care of it
yeah,
because she literally had to put him down on the ground
yep,
and sedate him, cut those things off, and then what was really odd too was it was almost like it was an artery. Like as soon
yeah,
as she cut those things, they were
bleed.
spurting blood like crazy, and she had to stop the blood. But
Yeah, and that's why they're
yeah,
called bloodworts. Yeah,
yeah,
but it looks just like a bump, a very small protruded bump that comes out. But they're very vascular, which cancer cells like, and when you cut them, they bleed like crazy. So yeah,
was
that was all right.
was there growing up with grandpa and grandpa, did you ever see any special issues where guys that had been working ranches their entire life said, man, we really need to call the vet? Or was it kind of a different old school approach of just like, we'll do our best, but if not, we'll just take care of the problem overall?
Yeah, and it kind of depended on whether or not you could afford a vet, to
Sure.
honestly, on who it was and how far out you were. If you know a vet was so far out that you're not going to save this calf, um, you try your best, and there are kits you can go in and it sounds gruesome, but that calf is dead inside of a cow, and you're not going to do a cesarean. You're going to try to get that calf out. There are little saws that you can
Yeah.
saw that calf up and chop and cut them up and pull them out in pieces. And that's risky because then you got entrails, you got pieces and parts of that calf that hopefully you're getting past the parts that are holding them up, and then you can bring them out without opening that body up.
Yeah.
You're cutting, legs off, and then trying to get a head or a neck turned. And if it's not turnable, then you cut it off and then drag it out.
I don't know where this story come from, but I heard one time somebody had tried to do that, and the the calf had died so long prior to that that it was almost falling apart and
Yeah.
decaying inside. And that was odd too, because you would think that the cow would have gotten sick and to an extent gotten rid of and completely removed the body, but it never did. And they said they were dealing with just some putrid smelling stuff
Right.
and trying to pull that out. But
Yeah, I've heard of that happening where a cow will spontaneously abort, but the calf isn't sloughed.
yeah,
I've never had it happen. We've never seen it happen, but I've heard of it happening. I heard of vets talk say, yeah, it's they're rotting inside, literally, and so you just wait and hope that cow doesn't get an infection, and it
right.
takes place all in the reproductive system where it's isolated, and hopefully it doesn't become systemic that it causes some issue. Um, and I know of humans that have lost a baby in like a third trimester and had to pack that baby even though the
Oh,
baby
sure.
has died, and because of the health of the mother, for whatever reason, they could not
Yeah.
take the baby out, which
Interesting.
seems odd now, but I mean that was older, years ago.
Sure.
And things are probably a little different now. They probably go into the C-section or something and do that, and there may be some reasons why they can't. I don't know,
Right.
but I've heard of that happening as well.
Well, your answer to the question for when to call the vet, though, was if I can't do it myself, but I'm going to need the assistance, essentially, right?
Yeah, if it's beyond my skill level and I think I'm going to lose the animal, then um, those are really the two elements I'm looking at. Otherwise, we've taken care of some pretty gruesome wounds in the past, and
Yeah.
if a horse can find a single piece of barbed wire in a 10,000-acre pasture, they will nearly kill themselves trying to make it happen.
It's the truth. And with that, we will take that conversation and put it out to pasture.